After winning a Tony, I don't know if people look at me differently. It's likely that many people don't even know I won a Tony. But I feel something else. I'm feeling great. It's a terrific honor. I've had the chance to understand. Oh, there's more. Not doing less is not necessary. David Hyde-Pierce hid something from everyone for 24 years that could have cost him his job. Man who played Dr. Niles Crane was keeping something from the many people who loved Frasier. His last time saying it out loud was on stage in 2007. Simply 3 words that made everything different. He then hurried to get married before it was against the law. There was a terrible sickness that was tearing his family apart. He shocked everyone by telling them, "No, the real reason why will surprise you." When they begged him to go back to Frasier, things didn't start out well for David Hyde-Pierce. A father with his own goals that never left the small town of Saratoga Springs set the ball rolling. Wishes that would never leave the small town of Saratoga Springs. Graduating in 1932, George Pierce was ready to start acting on stages in New York. Unfortunately, the Great Depression ruined those plans. He was told to stay home and get a safe job by his father, who ran a small insurance company. It was George. After marrying his maid, he lived a quiet life. He never stopped playing, though. Until the end of his life, he was in community plays put on by area theater groups. While David was growing up, he never got to see his dad act. But those unfulfilled dreams were always with him. He felt a quiet pressure to do well because of it, not just for himself but also for the failed version of his father. David often wondered if this was his life or just the end of his father's. When he finally became famous and won 4 Emmys and a Tony, David had been acting for a long time before anyone knew his name. He did it in a church, not on a stage. He first played the organ at Bethesda Episcopal Church when he was still a boy. No small task was accomplished. Working closely with the main organist, he learned how to play the huge instrument and handle its keys, pedals, air pressure, and timing. He learned to play the big organ by working closely with the main organist. Time, keys, wheels, air pressure, and pressure. He thought differently after that. David won the Yaddo Medal with his high school graduation in 1977. In his town, it was a big deal to get an award for being smart and good. It had also been won by his brothers. Although David was shocked, he refused to believe it would occur to him. He felt like he didn't belong, and not just because he was the youngest. He had lies. He was having doubts about his sexuality and didn't know where he fit in. It happened in a small town in the 1970s. His actions were private. Though he did very well in school, singing, and theater, there was always this small voice of doubt in his head. He went to high school with other creative kids who painted, wrote, and played music. Squatting behind the piano, he told dry jokes. Everyone believed he would do well, and he did. He wore the Yaddo badge on his chest, but he still felt like he had to hide a part of himself in order to fit in. At Yale in 1977, David didn't plan to become a performer. He wished to play the piano in concerts. He had been making music for a long time and had even played at church, although college was not the same. Daily practice of 8 hours was needed to keep up with the music schedule. Although David tried, the truth hurt him deeply. He didn't love it enough. The thought of being locked in a room with only a piano and a metronome for 12 hours made him shudder. Afterwards, he said, "I realized I wasn't obsessed." That difficult time did not break him, informed him. After that, he went to the show. Still creative and challenging, but with other people, conversation, and energy instead of being alone. He let go of what he thought he should do and did what felt right. That was the start of everything. The backup plan wasn't to act. He needed to find that way. David was getting antsy with the practice routine and the schoolwork side of music even before he made the switch. He learned names, dates, and movements by listening to lecture after lecture about artists and theory. It did not bother him in the least, feeling empty. He wanted something living and emotional. He wasn't lazy, he just wasn't motivated. That boredom turned into fuel. He began looking for classes that made him think, not just repeat things. He changed his major to English at that point. He got ideas, stories, and personalities from reading. And everything fell into place when he moved into theater. Suddenly, there was room to think, feel, and make things. Not being interested in music history didn't mean not being interested in the arts. They had to pick a version that didn't bore him to death. Those decisions affected every job he had afterward. What caught David, Gilbert, and Sullivan at Yale was a surprise. It began when he was a student and played a part in HMS Pinafore. He was in charge of Princess Ida by the end of his second year. It wasn't just a school play. Their conversation moved quickly, the humor was sharp, and the timing was spot on. David loved this kind of task. Besides learning how to make jokes funny, he also learned how to work with other people without losing his own voice. The first product started a fire. Eventually, David did something brave. He dropped his music major and switched to English and theater arts as his primary subjects. At first, his parents didn't like it. They wanted him to learn a lot of different things, not just the arts. So David gave them both, theater, which was his love, and English, which was his safety net. He told me that the English major was there, in case I wasn't going to be a theater major, and the theater major was, just in case. Making that choice was smart. It made him feel balanced. He wasn't just acting. His work got him a nomination for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. This was the highest level of praise he had ever received, and it should have been the start of a new phase. But even after being nominated for an Oscar, the phone didn't start ringing all the time with offers. He wasn't waiting for any exciting roles or rich contracts. Instead, he went back to his normal life. There were no exciting roles or payoffs waiting for him. He instead went back to his normal routine and played the tough, quiet parts he was used to. It was a harsh reminder of how Hollywood treated stars like Jekyll, who were admired for their toughness but rarely given praise. The business world never quite knew how to thank him for all his hard work and skill. His subtle strength started to be overlooked as newer, flashier skills took over the screens. He was hurting behind the scenes. Jekyll didn't like to bother people. He loved his job and was always busy. But people who knew him well said he got angry sometimes. He saw people become famous who were less skilled but had more charm. He kept telling himself that the painful knees, the insomnia, and the lack of sleep were all parts of following a dream in New York. Although Pierce was poor, he pushed himself further by signing up at Michael Howard Studios. It was famous for how hard it was to learn how to act, but he could barely afford food. His only food sources were scraps and the occasional free meal at a studio event. He was more interested in how to get by this week on a small budget than in talking about method acting and performance theory. He was hungry though, which gave him something else. He put all of his feelings and tough times into his acts. No longer was it just playing to stay alive. His work became real because of that. He also made friends with other artists who were having a hard time during this time. That feeling of pain together made ties that would last for years. All of that changed in 1986. David was chosen as Laertes at the Public Theater, where Kevin Kline will play Hamlet. One of the most important stage events of the year. Pierce found himself on stage doing Shakespeare, fighting with swords, and giving long speeches in front of reviewers in packed houses. Although Kevin Kline was already famous, he treated him like a friend and set the standard for how to be a worker. With that performance, Pierce really felt like he fit in the world of serious theater for the first time. He was under a lot of pressure, but he did well. People noticed because the reviews were good and doors opened. That job wasn't just a job, it was a big step forward. As a waiter in Beyond Therapy in 1982, he got his first taste of Broadway even earlier. In May, it started at the Brooks Atkinson Theater. There was a lot of talent in the group. It was like magic for everyone, including Diane Wiest, John Lithgow, and a young actor like David. The whole group laughed so hard at his one line during the first practice that it was hilarious. Despite feeling happy at first, he didn't stay that way for long. After only a few weeks, the show ended. He sat on the stage by himself after the last show and stared out into the empty theater. He was completely crushed. Later, in 1992, Norman Lear wrote The Powers That Be. Everything was working in its favor. The movie has a strong cast, sharp political humor, and future stars like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But David Hyde-Pierce stood out. He played a congressman named Theodore Van Horn, who was extremely shy and almost killed himself. Others noticed how nervous he was, and how smart he was when he wasn't talking. Still, it wasn't sufficient. Just 2 seasons were enough for the show to be canceled. It didn't get many viewers, and network politics didn't help. But what looked like a failure turned out to be a twist that made his career. David Crane and Martha Kaufman, who later made Friends, were producers on The Powers That Be. They noticed something unique about Pierce. He could make awkwardness seem natural and funny. They remembered that, and more importantly, it put Pierce in touch with the right people at the right time. His name began to get around, and soon he was being thought about for a bigger job. That would change entertainment on TV, for good. There was no official script waiting for Pierce when he walked into the Frasier offices. Still, there wasn't even a real person. Niles didn't really play a part. It was only a dream. Producers wanted to explore the idea, of Frasier's brother being the opposite of Frasier, who was a Freudian therapist. Pierce didn't even try out. His talk with the team lasted 45 minutes. They talked about ideas for characters, their pasts, and their minds. It seemed like nothing to him when he left. Later, there was a call. They'd like him. Reading is not allowed. No phone call. Simply him. Pierce did look a lot like Kelsey Grammer when she was younger, which helped, but it was more than that. He felt like Niles Crane before Niles even existed, because of how energetic, smart, and a little nervous he was. His performance was the basis for the part. One of the few times in TV history that an actor walked into a meeting and left with a role that was perfect for them. Randomly, it changed everything. The spark between Pierce and Grammer was clear from the very first scene they were in together. It was felt right away by writers and directors. They gave Niles more to do before the pilot even aired. He was just meant to be a supporting figure. But something came up when they were together. The stress, the rhythm, the glares that aren't said, and the insults that are said too loudly. It was brilliant gold. That relationship became the show's soul. Many episodes, especially fan faves, were based on the brothers' fights and moments of unintentional brotherly love. Unfortunately, it almost didn't happen. NBC officials were not sure. They believed Pierce had too much of a show. His training as an actress at Yale went back a long way. That made them scared. At the beginning of the 1990s, TV shows were moving toward more casual, real-life acts. But the people who made Frasier fought back. They thought in him. They knew that his tendency to act out wasn't a weakness. That thing was his secret tool. So. Niles' style was unique because it was so passionate. No one else could copy it. The thing that made Niles stand out was the same thing that the network was afraid of. It became history when he won so many Emmys. There has been one mention for every season of Frasier over the past 11 years. It happened 4 times, in 1995, 1998, 1999, and 2004. It's not often that consistent. He kept getting better, even though he was up against big names like Brad Garrett, Peter Boyle, Sean Hayes, and Jeffrey Tambor. It's not easy to keep up that kind of run, though. Each year, people had bigger hopes. He joked. They say comedy on TV is changing when he won his 4th Emmy in September 2004. As tiredness hid beneath the joke, call me when it changes back. That stress was caused in part by the way Pierce worked. He didn't just read lines. He was crazy. At night, he rewrote conversation in his head. He came with hundreds of notes. He argued about how to deliver lines with writers. He did the scenes over and over again. Every break, breath, and eye movement. He needed it to be perfect. It wore me down. It took more work to do less on screen. Even though it looked easy, he spent hours making it that way. During the 11 seasons, it was both a gift and a curse. His true colors were shown in a certain scene. Pierce played Niles trying to iron his pants before a date for 7 minutes in Season 6, Episode 14, called 3 Valentines. The scene was mostly quiet. There are big problems. First, he sets fire to the pants, then the couch. And this continues until almost the whole apartment is destroyed. It was the best kind of physical entertainment. Lots of noise and no words. 47 takes were needed for that scene. Pierce made sure that every single move was perfect. Due to the risk of fire, it was filmed without a live crowd. The Golden Globes didn't like him, but the Emmys did. His name was put forward 5 times, from 1995 to 1998, and again in 2001. Throughout the game, he never won. Fans didn't get it. The critics were mad. The performance got great reviews from everyone. So why the look of disapproval? Some people said that Globe readers didn't get his subtlety. Politics was blamed by others. No matter what the reason was, the snubs hurt. Pierce did not make a fuss about it. In contrast, the Hollywood foreign press kept quiet, which was noticeable. It wasn't like Pierce was a star even when he was at his best. Pierce made $1 million per episode, which is still a lot of money, but a lot less than Kelsey Grammer's $1.6 million per episode in the last few seasons. This was true even though his part had grown to be half the show. The gap was rude to some fans. Pierce never said anything bad in public. He was interested in the art, but it's hard to miss. He worked just as hard on the show, made people laugh, and won over just as many hearts. The numbers, though, didn't show that. Pierce did something no one saw coming in 2007. Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical for Curtains. The show had songs, jokes, and a lot of dancing. It was a murder story that happened behind the scenes. Additionally, it was the final work of the famous songwriters, John Kander, and Fred Ebb. Playing the part wasn't simple. Besides acting and singing, he had to be funny. He did a great job, though. He beat well-known people like Raul Esparza and Jonathan Groff. Pierce's 25-year career in theater began as a waiter in Beyond Therapy. At the end of his speech, he thanked Brian for all the notes he had given him over the years. Brian was thanked for all the notes over the years. For 8 weeks, until August 31, 2008, he kept doing curtains. With that much endurance, especially in live theater, he showed he wasn't just a popular comedy star. He was a serious player on stage. A big swing by Pierce happened 2 years before Curtains, in 2005. Spamalot is the Broadway show based on Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and he joined the cast. He played Sir Robin, a hero who was too scared to fight and liked song and dance more. It wasn't at all like Niles Crane. It was silly, crazy, and full of pratfalls. Sure, but that was the point. Pierce put his arms out to stretch. The play Spamalot got the Tony Award for Best Musical and ran for more than 1,500 performances. And people saw something new in him. He wasn't afraid of anything. People loved him even when he was being silly or doing slapstick. Pierce joined the new cast of Hello, Dolly in 2017. Next to Bette Midler, people were already talking about the show. Midler's name alone meant that her shows were sold out. Pierce had to get after it, though. As Horace Vandergelder, he played both a grumpy bad guy and a romantic hero. To play next to one of Broadway's biggest stars, he had to be funny, charming, and convincing. The show went viral after its April 20th premiere. Midler won the Tony for Best Actress, and the show won the award for Best Revival. Critics liked Pierce because he was calm and funny. He wasn't trying to get the attention of anyone else. He held the story together. Every show he did with Midler in the last few weeks of 2018 was sold out. That was after Pierce had shown it again. He could do high-stakes, well-known drama without missing a beat. Pierce wasn't done betting, though. He directed his first Broadway show in 2015. Music was by Barbara Anselmi, and the song was called It Should Have Been You. It was written by his husband Brian Hargrove. That was a funny wedding movie with a twist. It didn't go the way you thought it would. Pierce thought that directing a new musical as his first job was crazy, but he was determined to do it. The show started at the Brooks Atkinson Theater, which is where Pierce's first Broadway show was in 1982. That particular point was important. It was exactly the same as before. Critics liked how Pierce led the show in a clear and warm way, combining funny and touching moments. His experience as a child leading friends in backyard plays, and as a performer himself, gave him ideas. It labored. It felt like a show for me. That's what happened. Things went very badly for Pierce in 2013. In the play Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike, which was both funny and sad, he played the lead role. He played Vanya, a quiet guy who was dealing with guilt, loss, and the chaos of his family. The part needed everything: fun, sadness, time, and pain. Pierce did it. It won the Tony Award for Best Play, and Pierce was up for Best Actor. Everyone remembered that he wasn't just good at shows after his second Tony nomination. He could also play a part. Pierce kept the whole theater quiet during an unforgettable speech in the second act. But I could hear his words, feel his sadness, anger, and memories. In that year, it was one of the most talked about events on Broadway. Music, comedy, and even a co-star weren't necessary for him. Just give him a stage and a good story to tell. It was 1982 when David Hyde-Pierce met Brian Hargrove. They were both young actors trying to make it in Hollywood, and their director put them in touch with each other. The first time they met, neither of them knew the other was gay. They were just friends who went to performances together and supported each other. It took months for them to figure out there was more between them. In the end, Pierce said, "We just hung out like best friends. We figured it out in the end." In the entertainment business, things tend to move quickly and loudly, so that kind of slow, natural relationship isn't common. But in those days, being gay in Hollywood could mean the end of a career. Not saying anything, they did. They lived in different apartments and didn't show off in public. Few people outside of their group knew the truth, but plenty of other people did. Few people outside of their group knew the truth, but plenty of other people did. Pierce later said that they felt dangerous, telling people about their relationship in the beginning. It was silent for more than 20 years. Pierce stayed private even after he became popular, as Niles Crane on Frasier. He only hinted at his relationship without saying it out loud. Whatever happened changed in 2007. The age of Pierce was 48. He thanked Brian for the Tony Award he won for Curtains on stage. It was the first time he talked about their relationship in public. Late that same year, his publicist revealed it. The response was not clear. Others praised him. Some people asked what the big deal was. A few people didn't mind. Pierce then understood that being gay isn't about making other people happy. You have to do it for yourself, which is what he did. Bree and David got married on October 24, 2008. Proposition 8, a bill that would make it illegal for people of the same gender to get married in California, was about to be voted on. They did not want to wait to make it public. It was a simple service. Not any guests or plans. An efficient friend, a witness friend, and their 2 dogs. Pierce told a reporter 3 weeks later, "Yeah, we got married 3 weeks ago," to prove it. Then there was the heartache. It passed on November 4, 2008, just a few days after they got married. Marrying someone of the same gender was again illegal. Their wedding was still legal, but only just. Even so, it felt like being hit. Pierce spoke with others about it. He asked, "Can you imagine if people in your state actually voted that you're not married? You shouldn't be worried about it." At that moment, he realized how weak LGBTQ+ rights were still, and how personal the fight for freedom had become. It wasn't just marriage rights that David Hyde-Pierce fought for. Alzheimer's had severely affected his family. Back in the 1980s, his grandfather started to forget how to read menus, make bad chess moves, and get lost. In the end, he had to be put in a nursing home. Pierce's grandma, who was his wife, had been covering for him for years and no one knew it. She handled everything. She ran away from the worst of it. Once he was in a mental hospital, the stress started to show on her. A short time later, she died of a stroke. It happened again after that. After having heart surgery and a stroke, Pierce's dad, George, got dementia. The signs were worse for him. He got angry at times. Bad things happened after his wife died. It was necessary for the family to put him in care. Even though Pierce's brother tried to help, they had to get help from a professional in the end. The event was very bad. 2 times of seeing someone you love leave before your eyes left scars. Pierce did more than just cry. He began to speak out for the Alzheimer's Association in 2007. He even spoke out in Congress to ask for more money and attention. Alzheimer's doesn't just hurt people's memories, he said, it also breaks up families. His goal was to find one advocate for every American with the disease through campaigns like Champions. Folks paid attention because he made it personal. Years later, Pierce shocked fans when he turned down the chance to be in the new Frasier. An audience favorite was his character Niles. He wasn't there when everyone thought he would be. Grammer told Pierce that he just didn't want to do it again. There was no bad blood between them. There was no longer a need for him on the show. Pierce told them that Frasier had moved on to a new place. That's right, they have new personalities. Things are going well. That was still not all of it. Some people who knew Pierce think he wanted to keep his reputation safe. He already gave Frasier 11 seasons and 263 episodes. It may have felt like going backwards to go back. Besides wanting more freedom, he may have wanted more time to do projects that interested him at his age. He told someone once that he didn't want to sign another long TV deal. He wanted to try new things in his own area. This included Julia on HBO Max. It started airing in 2022, and Pierce played Julia Child's husband, Paul Child. The show got good reviews, and Pierce's acting got extra praise. But after only 2 seasons, it was canceled in January 2024. That made a lot of room in his schedule. He still didn't go back to Frasier, though. In reality, Julia wasn't the only reason at first. Pierce instead went back to the stage in 2025. Pirates, the Penzance musical, a bold, jazz-inspired take on the classic operetta, had him as the lead. As Major General Stanley, he sang quickly and made people laugh out loud. Starting April 24, the show will run until July. Some people thought he was lively and crazy. Despite being 66 years old, he was still playing parts that required a lot of energy, time, and voice. Most people his age would avoid these parts. By moving the story from England to New Orleans, the show gave it a new look. It gave it a New Orleans vibe and sounds from the Caribbean. With performances by Ramon Karimloo and Jinx Monsoon, it became one of the most popular shows of the year. Additionally, it showed that Pierce wasn't done yet, even after decades in the business.